What if the real horror of Carrie isn't telekinesis? What if it's loneliness? For nearly 50 years, Carrie has been remembered as one of the greatest horror films ever made. People remember the bucket of pig's blood, the burning gymnasium, and Sissy Spacek's haunting stare as she unleashes destruction on everyone around her. But if that's all we remember, we miss the real tragedy. Carrie White isn't a monster. She's a victim who finally breaks. I'm Aaron, and welcome back to the Character Couch here at the Confusing Middle, where we explore the psychology behind some of film's most unforgettable characters. Today, we're taking a closer look at Carrie White and asking an important question. What happens when a lifetime of abuse, isolation, and humiliation finally reaches its breaking point? Brian De Palma's 1976 adaptation of Stephen King's first published novel remains one of the defining horror films of the 20th century. But unlike many horror films, Carrie isn't really about a supernatural threat invading ordinary life. Instead, the horror comes from ordinary people, the classmates who mock her, the teachers who don't fully understand her, and most of all, her mother. The supernatural powers are spectacular. The psychology behind them is heartbreaking. One prison is school. The other is home. Neither is safe. At school, Carrie is relentlessly bullied. She's awkward, painfully shy, and socially inexperienced because she's been isolated her entire life. Every interaction reminds her that she doesn't belong. But home is even worse. Margaret White, played brilliantly by Piper Laurie, raises Carrie under an oppressive form of religious extremism. Nearly every normal part of growing up is treated as sinful. Puberty, friendships, romance, even simply feeling beautiful. Instead of preparing Carrie for adulthood, Margaret teaches her to fear the world. Every mistake becomes evidence of wickedness. Every question deserves punishment. Every emotion deserves guilt. It's psychological abuse disguised as righteousness. One of the fascinating things about Carrie is that her telekinesis works almost like psychological metaphor. Yes, within the story, it's a genuine supernatural ability, but symbolically, it represents something much more relatable. Every insult, every humiliation, every ounce of fear has to go somewhere. Most people release emotional pressure through conversation, friendship, therapy, or healthy coping mechanisms. Carrie has none of those. She has no support system, no emotional outlet, no one she truly trusts. So the pressure continues to build. Her telekinetic powers become a physical manifestation of emotions she's never been allowed to express. Instead of screaming, the room shakes. Instead of crying, objects move. Instead of confronting her tormentors, the world bends around her. Her emotions literally become impossible to contain. Psychologists have long understood that prolonged social isolation can dramatically affect emotional development. Human beings are social creatures. We learn confidence through relationships. We develop identity through acceptance. We discover resilience because someone teaches us we're worth loving. Carrie experiences almost none of that. She grows up believing she's broken, that she's dirty, that she's sinful, that she's fundamentally different from everyone else. Eventually, she starts believing it. The tragedy isn't just that others reject Carrie. It's that she begins rejecting herself. Then comes the prom. For a brief moment, everything changes. Tommy Ross asks Carrie to the dance. She wears a beautiful dress. People smile at her. She dances. She laughs. For perhaps the first time in her life, she feels normal. She experiences something many of us take for granted: acceptance, which makes what happens next infinitely more devastating. The pig's blood prank isn't simply embarrassing, it's the destruction of hope. It's confirmation of every terrible thing she's believed about herself, that she'll never belong, that happiness isn't meant for her, that trusting people only leads to pain. People often describe the prom massacre as Carrie snapping, but psychologically, that's not quite accurate. She doesn't suddenly become unstable. She's been living under impossible pressure for years. The prank is simply the final weight placed on an already overloaded structure. Imagine bending a paperclip. 1 bend, 2 bends, 10 bends. Eventually it breaks. Not because of the final bend, because of every bend that came before it. Carrie's breakdown works the same way. The pig's blood wasn't the cause, it was the trigger. That's one of the reasons Carrie continues to resonate with audiences decades later. The film constantly asks us who the real monster is. Is it Carrie? Or the people who spent years creating her pain? The classmates who enjoyed humiliating her? The adults who failed to intervene? The mother who weaponized religion against her own daughter? Carrie certainly commits horrific acts. The destruction is undeniable. But the film refuses to let us ignore how she got there. It's a reminder that trauma rarely appears out of nowhere. It accumulates, slowly, quietly, until eventually, something gives way. One reason Carrie has endured for nearly 50 years is because bullying hasn't disappeared. Neither has emotional abuse. Neither has isolation. While most people won't develop telekinetic powers, many know exactly what it feels like to be laughed at, to feel invisible, to wonder whether anyone understands them. That's why Carrie continues to resonate. She's an exaggerated horror character built from very real emotional experiences. And perhaps that's the scariest part of all. Sissy Spacek's performance reminds us that the greatest monsters aren't always supernatural. Sometimes they're created, not through magic, but through cruelty. Carrie isn't simply a story about revenge, it's a cautionary tale about what can happen when compassion disappears. Because sometimes the person everyone fears is the person who needed kindness the most. If you've made it this far, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you see Carrie as a villain, a victim, or something more complicated? Let me know in the comments below. And if you've enjoyed this psychological deep dive, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to The Confusing Middle, and join me next time for another session on the Character Couch.